You're watching www.thepuplayer.com, and we have Sean Moore, the tournament director of this wonderful Asian Five Nations tournament here at Sri Lanka. Sean, first tell us, in terms of the ARFU, what plans do they have for South Asia, especially in the future?
Well, South Asia is definitely a target region for us, with teams like Sri Lanka is one of the strongest teams in Asia. So I think, where we'd like to focus on is a little bit more on the high performance end. As an Asian region, one of our goals is to qualify more teams for World Cups, World Cup Sevens. So that's probably the initial focus. And then it's up to the guys at the local union to do the hard work on the development front.
Looking at the current tournament, what are your views, especially coming in Sri Lanka? Your first impressions on the whole place, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think Sri Lanka is one of my favorite places to come and play and watch rugby. The fans are very knowledgeable, they're very passionate, and this is a fantastic venue. I've got to say I'm really excited to play here for the first time as an ARFU event, and already I think it's one of the best rugby venues in Asia, so hopefully coming back down here very regularly.
And also in the future, in terms of the RFE, what does the Asian Five Nations tournament have in the future for all these countries?
Yeah, there's some big changes afoot, obviously. Again, with that focus on high performance, next year's top 5 will be slimmed down to a top 3 competition. So that's whoever finishes in the top 3 places this year will directly go into that. The bottom 2 teams will go into Division 1. The idea for that really is so we can focus on the very sharp end of Asian rugby, the high performance unions. The IRB has categorized Japan as the highest performance union, and then Korea and Hong Kong are the next band down. So right now on results, that's possibly the top 3 for next year, and I think what we need is more closer competition against each other, and then also to play more teams from abroad. So I know the Serendip Cup down here is a great initiative, and I think that all that's going to help us as a region put more teams through to major international competitions, which is I think what everybody wants.
And finally, what do you think, how hard is it for a team to get to the top of Asia and for Asia to move to the world stage? What are your thoughts on that, and what is most important for these teams to actually work on?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good question because, of course, representing ARFU abroad, I often hear there's a big gap between Japan and everybody else, and I think that's a bit structural in world rugby. So if you look at the 8th or 9th ranked union in the world, quite often they'll beat the 10th ranked union very heavily. So again, this is why ARFU is focusing on the high performance side, so we can get more teams more competitive. I think this tournament is still the ideal format for it, and one of the positives is over the years we've gone from sort of 6 or 7 regional competitions at ARFU across all levels to last year was 30 plus. So I think that's the impetus provided by the Asian Five Nations, and I think that's going to continue for sure in the future. And I think teams playing more evenly matched teams will get us better rugby at the end of the day.
So, all right, thank you very much, Sean, and all the very best of the tournament.
Yes, thank you, guys.
So that was Sean speaking to thepuplayer.com. This is Yamin Mohammed signing off. Shine the passion.
I've got with me the captain of the Hong Kong team, winners today here in Sri Lanka and putting their first win on the board in this Asian Five Nations Championship. Nick, satisfied with the result?
Oh, we're happy to come away with the points here for sure. We're Sri Lanka are a very tough side, and they really took it to us. So we're very happy with how we came across and got the result.
Were you worried about the conditions coming in, the humidity, the heat?
Yeah, it was definitely a factor, and the ball was slippery. There was a lot of errors out there, which we have to go home and we'll have to reevaluate going to Korea next week. But yeah, the conditions made for a bit of a set piece battle, and we were happy with our set piece. So that's one positive coming out of the game.
Yes, you definitely dominated in the scrums and the lineouts, Nick, but didn't seem to have much happening outside of that. Is that a concern for you?
Yeah, a lot of individual errors with knock-ons, and we'll have to reassess that for sure. We probably need to look at the video and see where we can touch up on that for next week.
Not a huge player base. How often do you guys prepare? How good is your intensity of preparation? Because you've got players playing the 7s and 15s format. How does that work for you guys back home?
It was a bit of a tight preparation. We've had some guys pull out of through injury through the 7s and stuff like that. It was a tight preparation. We had a couple of warm-up games on a Saturday and a Tuesday leading in against a Hong Kong Barbarian side, which prepared us well. And then we had the Philippines last week. So no excuses preparation-wise. A few injuries, but yeah, we've got a good squad, and hopefully we can build on this for next week.
And where do you hope to end up in the top division of this Asian Five Nations?
Our big goal is second in the Asian Five Nations. We've got Korea next week, and that will determine whether we go have a shot at Japan in the last leg. So next week's a key game for us.
Nick, congratulations on a win today. Thanks a lot for talking to thepuplayer.com.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
I've got with me also the forwards coach of the Sri Lanka team, Mr. Pollack, who coached and played for the Havelocks side over the domestic rugby season that we've just had. Talking to him about Sri Lanka's performance today, coming away with a 41-8 win, Paula. Would you have taken that at the start of the game?
No. We came into this game, looking back from last week's game. We had a lot of areas that we needed to work on, and I think today we did. The score, everyone thought, it would have been higher. I came here to win. And, I'm proud of what the boys have done. And with that score, and, I'm happy with it. The performance, little areas that we need to work on. But the performance that they put out there tonight, considering last week's game, I think they did a pretty good job.
We saw Hong Kong start really well, and we got points on the board quickly. And everyone expected them to probably run away with it towards the end of the game. But that didn't happen, Paolo. Are you satisfied with that?
I am. We spoke at halftime. Just little areas that we needed to work on. More, within the scrum, our lineouts that we need to work on. But we stuck to our game plan. We stuck to our defense, and it paid off.
Things improved in the set piece later on in the game. We had the lineouts going to hand. We didn't win a lineout, probably won just one single lineout in the first half. That's something that we need to work on. Do we have the personnel? Do we have the tactical awareness to do that and change it during the game, Paula?
Oh, we do. We've got the personnel for it. We've got players that that are playing in the position, and not every player comes out on a day has a good day. But it's up to them to prepare well for a game, and I'm considering during the training I think they can do that.
We got a lot of hard work done in the tackles and things like that, but we didn't seem to want to spread the game as much as we should have against a side that had problems moving laterally. They were obviously bigger and stronger than us, but we might have been able to move them laterally. We didn't see that happening, Paula. Any reason for that?
I think we leave that to the boys that are playing out there. We can't coach from outside and tell them, this is what needs to happen. Playing rugby, you've got to make sure you know what's happening, and that comes from all the senior players. They take control and they see what's in front of them. If they had noticed that, I think the boys would have taken note and would have started attacking. I think the forwards started doing that, where they started doing the pick and go, where draw their forwards in, and I think we saw that at the end where we scored. We got a scrum and gave it out to our backs and got a result off that.
Yeah, that try was really probably the highlight of our game, and it shows that we can do that. We've got the personnel for it. Even in the 79th minute to be able to come out and do that is fantastic. Why weren't we doing that for the rest of the 78 minutes, Paula?
I think it all comes down just to the boys. They've got to be confident in themselves. They've got to be confident in the ability that they have. These players, they're all good players. They all have good abilities that they need to use, and that only themselves know when to bring it out. Sri Lanka, they've got a team here. The boys are big. The boys have got the skills to play against other teams. So if the boys can be confident in what they have, they can match up against teams.
Are you looking to rotate for Japan and then come back with your strongest side against Philippines?
We're not going to rotate too much. We're still taking some of the main boys into that team. We're looking at there having a good game, having a go at Japan. We're not going there just to make the numbers and come back with with a win or a loss. I'm here to help these boys, be confident, play rugby, play at the top level. So, my inspiration is to take them there and win this game. And anything happens in rugby. Whoever turns up on the day to play, anything goes anyway.
Well done on a good performance today. Paula, thanks a lot for talking to us, and congratulations on today's performance. Let's hope we can go a couple better against Japan and against Philippines. Thanks, mate.
All right, thank you.
Got with me the captain of the Sri Lankan Tuskers, leading Sri Lanka to a 41-10 loss here today, but it's not all forgotten, because it was a game that was expected to be won by Hong Kong with a much bigger margin, and I'm sure Namal is happy that we managed to hold them to this. When they started off, Namal, it looked like they were really going to run away with it, but you held it back.
Well, as you said, a lot of people were expecting us to lose from 100 points to nil or something, but boys stepped up, they gave their heart out and they gave their 100%. that's what we expect from rugby players in Sri Lanka.
They really managed to bring their bodies and put them on the line in the breakdown. That's something that you must be proud of.
Well, of course, I mean, especially the front row and the forwards. I mean, we tackled up front. Third row did a lot of cover defense. Three quarters, hats off, our centers. I mean, their defending was outstanding because if you actually look at the weight of the opposite center, it's somewhere around 100 plus. And my boys were around, both of them were somewhere around 80 plus. But they played from their heart and they went in up front.
But that's where we lost the game, isn't it, Namal? It was just strength, it was just power, just brute force that they had against us. It wasn't skill, it wasn't anything else. So how do we solve that problem?
Well, I mean, see, we have to go on a long-term plan. That's why we have called for second generation, third generation Sri Lankans to come and play with us, because that will bring in more experience and more weight to the side. As you can, any rugby loving person will know that you need physique to play. And once we have a couple of third generation Sri Lankans playing for us, that will be a very strong side for us.
And is that going to happen in this tournament? A lot of people were expecting some Fijian players to play in this tournament, but will that happen against the Philippines?
Well, we were hoping to have a couple of Fijians and Australians and New Zealanders to play with us on this season, but unfortunately we were very slow on some certain documentation. But I hope the union, the ministry will step up for the Philippines game at least and give those boys the opportunity to play for Sri Lanka, because last 30 years no one wanted to come to Sri Lanka and play because of the entire terrorism and all those stories. But now we are glad, they are willing to come back to their homeland where their ancestors were living, and to give up their original passport wherever they live in UK, America, Canada or London, and take the Sri Lankan passport and be part of us.
And looking ahead to Japan and to the Philippines, any changes in personnel, and what do you expect from those two games?
Well, I mean, Japan game, of course, our main target is to keep a very low scoring, and for youngsters to get more experience, because if you actually look at the boys who play overseas, like Fazil, myself, my brother Yoshita, and even Luke, they stepped up when it was needed. So that means we need more experience to our back line and also for the front row. So Japan game, of course, we're looking at gaining more experience and build it up to the Philippines game. As I always believe, my task was to get a young side and develop it for 2019 World Cup and hand it over. So working on that.
Well, Ranjan scored and he's one of the youngest players in the team, so things are looking good now. So thanks very much for talking to us. Congratulations on today's performance and all the best for the next two games.
Thank you very much.
I've got with me the president of the Asian Rugby Football Union, Mr. Trevor Gregory, who's here for the Sri Lanka game, of course, and he's just witnessed Sri Lanka in a brave performance against Hong Kong, going down 41 points to 10. And let's just ask him first what he thought about the game. Did you enjoy that one, Trevor?
Yes, I did, yeah, and it was a very physical game. I think both sides were up for that. In humid conditions, it was quite energy sapping, but I think everybody could see the stamina of the players. They played all the way to the end, and in fact, Sri Lanka got their breakthrough right at the end. But I was very impressed with Sri Lanka's defensive performance too. I think they were really very tight at the back, and I think that bodes well for the next games, particularly when you have the Philippines here for the final game in the series. So that will be a big one.
Yes, we have been targeting that game, so the Philippines will be expecting some hot stuff when they come here in 2 weeks' time. But tell us about this tournament, Trevor. It's gone from strength to strength. You've got good sponsors on board, and now the quality of rugby is rising and rising in the top division. Are you happy with the way it's gone?
Yeah, I am, and it's amazing where we've come in 6 years. If you look back, just over 6 years ago, Asia used to have one tournament every couple of years. Last year we had 34 tournaments. And I think the standard in 15s and 7s has gone up dramatically. Obviously, that takes a lot of resources to do that, and we've had a major sponsor which has helped us, together with the IRB, to develop those competitions. ARFU itself puts a lot of hard work in, but we need that support. So next year, the structure will change, partly because we have to make it more cost-effective, because last year we had almost all 28 countries in ARFU playing. So there's a lot of tournaments, a lot of trips, so we had to make it more cost-effective. But there is also a natural break right now because the IRB have created what's called development grant bandings. So you have high-performance bandings, and development bandings. And 3 of our Asian countries are in high-performance or performance bandings. So there was a natural break at 3, but that doesn't mean to say that the teams out of those bandings can't qualify to get in there, but it also sets some targets for teams like Sri Lanka, who are in D1 right now, Development Group 1, to look at how to get into the performance group. First band is P2, where Hong Kong and Korea sit, and Japan are in HP2, which is a high performance. But I think it's very clear now. The IRB have come out and made these bandings. It gives everybody a chance to play at their level and with a chance to move up and down. We are the only set of tournaments in the world that have promotion and relegation. If only everybody else would follow Asia.
Yes, it is. I was just going to ask you, what's the relationship between AFU and the IRB? Is it good? And considering that we've got probably the best player base, the biggest player base here in Asia, which contribute to the IRB, do they take on board your suggestions and your complaints, even if it were?
Yeah, all of those things, and in varying amounts. We have a fantastic relationship with IRB, and frankly, without putting words in their mouths, they call us the model region. All the other regions are looking to do tournaments like we've done here with the A5N, and next year it'll be called the Asian Rugby Championship. Our Asian 7 series is very mature. People are following that. The same we're doing for the women. And of course, the IRB have a very, very good support for us. We need their support. We need them to be on board. But at the same time, we have set these challenges for ourselves. We've wanted to develop. We are 60% of the world's population, with 28 current countries, with 4 more queuing up to join now, which will take us to 32. But more significantly, we are 80% of the world's youth. So all these young players that you see coming through, but sadly, we're still 5.8% of the rugby playing population. So we have a massive growth potential. The IRB want us to support us to do that, but they have to see us growing. They don't have inexhaustible resources and funding, because 94% of all the money the IRB get comes from the 15s Men's World Championship, the World Cup. So they have to be careful how they spread that around. But they've been gradually increasing our grants. We do, obviously get sponsorship. And really now it's up to us to show that we deserve more support.
And when you look at the disparity between the amount of population that we've got and the rugby players, it's always down to one thing: physicality. Trevor, the Asian people can't compete on the same level. We've seen Hong Kong and Japan reliant on expatriate players. And what's the stance of the IRB towards expat players now that the Rugby Sevens has gained admission into the Olympics as well? Is the eligibility criteria going to conflict, and what's the what are the steps that the IRB is taking?
Not really a conflict. I mean, all world rugby falls under the IRB criteria, and you either have to have been born in a country or have a parent from that country, or the 3-year rule. For the Olympics, it's very clear. You have to have a passport. There's no other criteria. You must carry a passport to the Olympics. So all the qualifiers next year for the Olympics, and it looks likely that the Olympic qualifier for Asia will be the Asian 7 Series next year. So all those games will have to be played with people with passports. Now, whether the IRB will consider the inclusion of passports as one of their criteria, which they currently exclude under the IRB criteria, we will follow up on, because we've just had a little discussion about it right now. But I think clarity is what's needed. When you go back into something like the Olympics, and don't forget, rugby was in it in the 20s, although the 15s code, and it's impractical to ever consider that happening again, that you have a new set of rules to deal with. It wasn't many months ago that it was thought that the criteria for qualification would be the IRB criteria, but the Olympic movement came out and said, no, if you're going to qualify people, they must come under the Olympic Charter, and that means passports. So I think, whilst it may sound a bit confusing, we'll make everything very clear. We're a year away from that anyway, so by that time it'll be very important that we've made it clear. But I think what is equally important, and I'll say this from my chairman of Hong Kong Rugby Union, Cap 2, when we had the qualifier in the Hong Kong Sevens, and there's a 16th place in the Cup competition, to be able to get Sri Lanka to take that position up and do themselves proud. They got great support. They improved with all their games. That's what we've got to show the IRB. That's where we've got to step up. We're looking to do transcontinental sevens tournaments for our performance teams. So you'd play the top few in Asia against Foru, Brazil, African teams, all of that, to raise the standard of our Asian teams in a performance way at sevens. So there's a lot we've got to do. We've got to step up and show that we deserve a place at the highest table. Whoever comes second in this championship will play Uruguay in August. We've got to start getting closer to these teams. We've got to show that we mean business. Now, it's difficult when we say the word expatriate. You know, nearly all the players for Hong Kong are homegrown. You know, they have played their rugby. Several of them are born there. They've grown up through a very mature rugby system. And I think it's more important that the team is organic. Many years ago, Hong Kong did have an expat team. It was a mercenary team, you know, fly in and out. We don't do that. And I don't encourage anybody to do that. The Philippines have had to do it by necessity, but you'll be playing a team now in 2 weeks' time that have at least 10 players that have developed through their system. So it takes time. It takes a lot of time. And, you know, but I really feel that the Asian countries are making their efforts to do that, and we must continue.
And given our performance at the Hong Kong Sevens, Sri Lanka's performance, I mean, Trevor, are we like a model child for you?
Well, it's certainly it was certainly helping my cause, because you know it's very difficult, the wild card positions in these tournaments, because there is only one. And when Japan weren't in the World Series, they took their one in Japan. So then there's only another one in Asia, in Dubai, and there was always this idea that, you know, countries like Russia would get it. And because we had the qualifier, it meant that we could put our hand up and say, look, Sri Lanka were third in Asia at sevens. We can't ignore that. That's a massive thing. And actually, I encourage your president at the beginning of the tournament, please make sure Sri Lanka don't back off. They must target the top three, because then we've got a case to put to the IRB. And without that credibility, we wouldn't have been able to actually make that case. So, in real terms, absolutely, model child. We had an embryonic birth there, and it paid off. And the IRB were very impressed. So now we've just got to keep showing that we're going to develop, because, you know, while we're all developing, every country in the world now who has an IOC are going to be able to tap their IOC resources. And, you know, a lot of teams will start to improve, so we can't take a step back.
Well, Trevor, lots of plans in the pipeline for the ARFU. Hopefully Sri Lanka will be a part of those as well. Thanks very much for joining us here on thepuprate.com.
Thanks a lot. Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Cheers. I've got with me the coach of the victorious Hong Kong team, and just asking him what his take on this performance is. 41 points to 10. You satisfied with that performance, Lee Jones?
Obviously, you look at the result and you think we were pleased, but in terms of performance levels, we're not that happy. One, because fair play to Sri Lanka, they beat us up in the contact area tonight. I think they won the battle of the contact area, so a lot of credit goes there. And I think then the second factor was the humidity, which made the ball very slippery, which kind of forced a lot of errors in our game. You know, that's not an excuse, and it's unacceptable. So we need to improve in both of those areas for next week.
A team that had so much dominance in the set pieces, Sri Lanka couldn't win a line-out in the first half. You would have expected really to pile the points on. Yeah,
you know, we talked about it last week. Our set piece has got us out of trouble twice. We need more to our game to ensure that we get a result next week. We can't rely on our set piece to get us out of trouble against Korea, because quite simply it won't. So we need to develop the rest of our game.
And that's something I was going to ask you about as well, because you seem a little one-dimensional in that aspect. You seem just to be able to brute strength people out of the way. So how can you quick fix that, Lee?
I think we have the ability in the team. Our game plan was to come. We obviously watched Sri Lanka last weekend. We saw that they had problems with their set piece. So obviously we targeted that and we trained for that this week. It'll be a different focus against Korea next week. So we'll train other aspects of our game with a view to accommodating or suiting Korea.
And how much time do you have with these players? Do you have as much time as you want, or is it something that's very ad hoc?
No, the guys, they're all working. They all have careers outside of rugby. We'll have 2 training sessions this week with a team run on the Friday before the game. So no, it's very limited preparation time as well.
Yeah, that's something that Hong Kong has always had a problem with. Leah, is there any thoughts of professionalizing the game to the extent that it is in Japan?
No, I don't think so. And I'm just a coach. You need to talk to the powers to be behind the board of directors. I think the model works really well for Hong Kong at the moment. Although we can only get together 2 or 3 times a week, the fact that geography of Hong Kong works for us as well, in as much as the guys don't have to travel too far to get together. So I think the model works as well as it can work currently. It wouldn't take radical change to professionalise the game.
Speaking to your captain, Nick, and he said second place is your target. Are you satisfied you're on course?
Yeah, we've set ourselves up really well. Bonus point victories with both games. Couldn't be in a better position. Just a little disappointed with our performance levels tonight.
Well, Lee, I hope that you managed to work on that in time for Korea. Thanks a lot for joining us on the puprey.com.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks.